Welcome to the Mastering Commercial Real Estate Podcast, the show where we dive deep with top investors, operators, and industry pros to uncover how they're building wealth and creating real impact through commercial real estate. I'm your host, Cory Mortensen, capital raiser, commercial investor, and founder of 19 Holdings. Whether you're just getting started or looking to level up, this podcast is your go-to for real insights and actionable strategies. If you enjoyed the show, please hit that like button, leave a quick review, and share it with someone who should be listening. If you've got feedback or ideas to improve the show, I'm always open and I want to make this better for all you listeners. If you're ready to start building wealth passively through commercial real estate, visit 19holdings.com. That's ONE-9 Holdings to learn more and join our investor list. Enjoy this episode. All right, guys. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is your host, Cory Mortensen. This is the Mastering Commercial Real Estate Podcast. Today, I have two guests who I am very excited to be speaking with today. We have Rick and Crystal Rumer, the dynamic husband and wife team behind Texas Secured Notes. They've carved out a powerful niche in real estate by buying large parcels of land, subdividing them, offering owner financing, and turning those deals into performing notes for passive investors. With over a decade of experience, they've built a business that blends smart strategy, steady cash flow, and a commitment to helping others. Whether you're looking to diversify your investments or just learn from two entrepreneurs doing things differently, this episode is packed with insight. So Rick, Crystal, thank you guys so much for being on today.
Yeah.
We're excited. We're thankful to be here. Excited to chat with you today.
I like the dynamic duo part.
Yeah, it's exciting. And so Crystal and I had a pre-show call about a week or two ago, and we just kind of got some background on them. And it was really impressive what you guys have been able to do as a team and work together, because a lot of times it can be difficult to have a partner who isn't as entrepreneurial as some of the other people that I've spoken with. And just being in this industry, it's kind of all very entrepreneurial, right? Very happy to get y'all's insight as a power couple about how to operate a business, how to work with your significant other. I think that'll be a fun thing to touch on.
Yeah, of course. Well, we are Rick and Crystal Rumer. And yeah, I grew up in the Fort Worth area, Fort Worth, Texas. Crystal down the road in the Waco area. We met down in Houston quite a while ago. And I guess here's kind of how we kind of got into this. And it's interesting that you talk about us working together in a dynamic duo. We never had that intention, but I was working for JP Morgan Chase. I had my first rental property when I was 19, and then had a few more by the time I was around 30 or so, working for JP Morgan Chase. And that was 2008, 9 when the housing crunch came around. And I decided at that point, I didn't want to work for the bank anymore, and that we could do this in real estate. And I quit and began buying those foreclosures from the bank and doing fix and flips. Round about that time, we got pregnant for the first time. We were told we could not have children. We had a horrible pregnancy. She got sick, couldn't work anymore, and actually got fired for missing so much time for being sick. And pretty soon it was just backs against the wall. Hey, we're entrepreneurs now. Like, we don't have a job. Nobody's giving us a paycheck. And it was all hands on deck. And I mean, that's really the way it happened. And before we knew it, we were working together.
I do have to say, when he said that he quit, he literally came home one day and was like, yeah, so I think I'm going to quit, and we're going to do this whole real estate thing full time now. And I was like, okay, but I still had a job at that time. And then when I got let go because I was so sick from the pregnancy, we're like, sink or swim, like, what are we going to do here? Yeah. And we're just crazy enough to go for it. So we did.
I think we can go into a little bit further into our real estate walk, but I think I don't know how a lot of people try real estate. And I think sometimes it takes that back against the wall mentality to really have breakthrough. Thankfully, we kind of got that right out of the gate. Instead of doing it part-time for a long time, we just kind of had no other options. But in addition to fix and flips, this was 2009, 2010. In addition to fix and flips, we started doing some owner finance projects. We did some wholesaling. I think everybody's done wholesaling before. When you're trying to survive, that was an easy thing to do. We looked into multifamily, never pulled the trigger there. We did do some oil field housing down in South Texas. We built a facility in the middle of nowhere for Halliburton and Schlumberger and all of these guys to come stay at while they're down there drilling. So that was kind of our foray into anything commercial, I think. But what we really fell in love with was the owner finance. We had rentals that went bad. We had rentals that pipes froze and flooded the whole house. I think everybody's had one of those cat ladies that has a million cats that ruins, the carpet everywhere. We got tired of all the calls and all the rentals. And when we tried an owner finance deal on a rehab that we put too much money into and we couldn't sell it where we needed to, we took on a partner, borrowed from his IRA. He paid off our hard money loan, and we set him up with an owner finance deal. We put an owner finance person in there. We took the down payment for ourselves, so we got something out of it, but we set him up on a note, and we saw that and we said, hold on, there's something to this. And so we started doing that over and over, borrowing IRA funds, purchasing a home, reselling it on terms at a higher interest rate at a higher price. And we were arbitraging the two interest rates. We were getting paid a higher interest rate and paying off the lower interest rate IRA funds that we were borrowing. And we're like, this works. This is kind of a good idea for us. So that's kind of how we got to where we are right now and specializing in the owner finance world. And you want to tell how we do that?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, then we ended up with land, moved into land in 2016 with Texas secured notes. And we had a good friend that was doing similar owner financing, real estate in Houston as well. But he started exclusively doing land in 2016. And yeah, then we saw, okay, there's not as much competition with land. Like when you're finding a single family, there's thousands of people trying to go after that one property. But when you're buying larger tracts of land, 100 acres, 400 acres, you don't have all the competition like you do on a single family. So it just kind of transitioned into then focusing on land, which we loved, buying the dirt.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good lessons to unpack there with y'all's journey, where you're able to pivot. I do like the sentiment that you touched on about it was really the catalyst for y'all's success that all of the boats were kind of burned, right? Yeah. That saying, there's no way back. There's nothing we can, it's you have to move forward or it's failure. That there's only an option to succeed or fail. And you guys were in a situation, I was in a similar situation when I moved from commercial brokerage to residential brokerage. And I really just needed a change. I needed something that was going to be better suited for my skills and what I wanted to do. And I'm not one to really waste time, especially when I'm in a situation that I don't enjoy. And so my ability to pivot is pretty quick, but I didn't have any savings. I had like maybe a month and a half worth of bills ready to go. And so it was really do or die at that point. And so it was, and I think if I was in a position where I was more comfortable, ironically, I wouldn't have been so successful in that role because I had to, and it was right before COVID too. So I had to do a whole new basically industry. Residential and commercial are so different. And in COVID, at the start of COVID, learn all that while basically just doing everything as much as possible and working as hard as possible to pay the bills. And that's kind of the situation it sounds like that you guys were in. It's like, okay, we have to go and make this. This is what we were already leaning towards, and that was the catalyst towards changing over everything. So I think it's kind of hard to give that advice to other folks and say it's like, hey, get yourself into such a pinch that you got to make it work. I think even Grant Cardone mentioned it one time, and everybody's got their opinions on that guy, but he did say something that I thought was interesting. He said, if you want to go and be successful, go buy a car you can't afford.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how solid all that advice is, but I do like the sentiment. It is what catalyzed you guys to be successful. So walking back a little bit, what was the learning curve like for owner financing? Because that's kind of a non-traditional, you guys have been very creative in how you've structured your deals. Where did you guys get the resources and knowledge to execute on these deals?
It's a good question. I'm trying to remember. This was now 15 years ago. We were running in a circle of other investors, right? And some people have been to Subject to seminars. Some people have, got this attorney that does this over here, and everybody's got these different experiences. And I think,
Well, I know it was through David and Curtis. It was through we had a business partner. It was him and his dad that actually went to some kind of training about owner financing on single family. And because we had the fix and flip that we put too much money in, and then we literally had a rental in Houston. It never froze when we lived there so many years, but we had a renter that skipped out and it happened to freeze when they left. So pipes busted, and that was 30, 40 grand in damage that then we had to put into this home. And so we're going, this stinks. Like, this is not fun. And dealing with tenants and toilets and all of that. I mean, sure, you can do a management company as well, but we were just at a place where we knew we wanted the cash flow, but we didn't want the hassle of the other stuff. And we had heard about being the bank. And so we're just going, okay. And him being a financial advisor, working for a large bank for a long time, it was like, well, they've got the biggest buildings on every corner. What makes them so successful? So it just I think it was accumulation of a lot of different things, but we had a partner that he learned information on it, but it wasn't until we had bad deals that went south. And then we use the owner financing as a way to get out,
as an exit strategy.
Yeah.
Like, how can we turn this? Like, how can we end up making money here? And I think that comes back to, back against the wall and not having any savings. And because a lot of people can buy their way out of troubles or figure out it's just going to cost them some money. Well, when you don't have any money for it to cost you, you got to figure something out, and you have to make money off of it.
And then we leveraged self-directed IRA funds as well. And so we had that network, and people just liked the cash flow and they wanted to be hands off.
But she mentioned something. Let's think about this a little bit. And I always invite people to kind of go through this thought experiment that the banks do have the biggest buildings on every street corner, in downtown, in every major downtown. And why is that? What do they do? They're involved in real estate. We know that real estate is a key, but they're not taking the risk part of the real estate. They're not actively involved in the real estate. They are lending on it, and they're lending, and they hold this trump card called a first lien position that if the whole deal goes bad, if they misjudge this, the people that ask for the loan, or, they underwrote it wrong. Well, they still have that trump card where at least they have the property back. And so it's all about lowering your risk and trying to tweak and maximize your return. The beautiful thing is it allows you to plan into the future. Once you create a stream of these, is your income you can set out in front of you, and you can begin making plans based on that. When you're fixing and flipping, you have these cash flows. You make great money, and then you make nothing for 6 months, and then you make great money, or there's some kind of give and take like that. Anyways, owner financing has allowed us to take control of that a little bit more and mitigate some of that.
On the typical owner finance deal structure, you touched on it a little bit, but if you could go more in depth on what those offerings look like for your investors, and you mentioned a little bit of the arbitrage. What are some of the typical interest rates? Throw out some numbers that are typical of some of the deals that you guys do.
Yeah, let me tell you how we do it first, and that is we buy a pizza and then we sell by the slice. Okay, we buy 100, sometimes 400 acres. We subdivide it and then sell each one of those individually, not to a developer, but to the end user. And then we'll owner finance it for them on terms. They all want to, the whole purpose of it is for them to build their dream home, and for them to have, an oversized lot that they so desire. And so it's hard. The opportunity is it's hard for somebody to go to a bank and get that loan because they have to put 50% down if they can find a bank that will finance raw land. But we're providing them that raw land, very little horizontal development done on it, and we're going to carry that note for them. So here's kind of what our terms generally look like. And that is very simple. Most of the time we'll carry them for 15 years, no prepayment penalty, a 15-year note at 10%. So that's the short of it. That's what they're going to end up paying. Imagine somebody finds a property, we sell it for $120,000. They put $20,000 down, have a $100,000 note. So now we've done all of that. We've subdivided it. We've sold the land to an end user. They are now beginning to make payments. So now let's pretend we're in a different seat. And now we're looking at this note as an investor would. Here's a note that is worth $100,000 for the next 15 years at a 10% interest rate. Simply put, if you bought that at the unpaid balance, $100,000, you're lending $100,000 on this deal. You become the lender now. When you're the note investor, you're the lender. You're putting down $100,000, and your intention is to get a 10% return on your money. And that's what happens. You get paid 10% interest. It is fully amortized over that 15 years. So there's some fun things that happen there because of that, i.e., your monthly payment on that particular note I just told you, $100,000, 15 years at 10%, you get $1,075 a month. Quick math tells me you're going to make over $12,000 in a year in that. Well, $12,000 on a $100,000 note, I thought it was at 10%. Well, 10% is the interest portion. You're also getting a return of principal. Cash on cash, I like to say you make about 12.9% on that, even though the buyer is paying 10% on their money, and you're technically earning 10% on your money, but your cash flow is at 12.9%. So just to recap, some of that is interest of that payment, some of it is interest, and some of it is principal. And as you know from looking at an amortization schedule, that changes every month, but your payment is always going to be $1,075 on that.
Yeah, and there's so many advantages to going this route, both as the operator and as the investor. You know, you've got more stable cash flow, you've got a good trade-off of risk and reward based on, you know, tangible assets that we all know and love, which is real estate. And so how much of underwriting the real estate plays into the success of this business plan? Is it, you know, very easy to kind of make these things work, or what has to happen at the property level for these deals to be successful?
I love that you said the underwriting on the real estate level. We utilize brokers and we take a little bit more of that risk on up front to run some comps and know what we're going to be able to sell these for. So our risk might be a little bit more because we're making a little bit of a judgment call. But the investor that buys one of these notes, or the lender on one of these notes, their amount of due diligence on the land is significantly reduced. And let me explain. When we buy 100 acres and we subdivide it into 10 plots and we sell them all off, well, what are you concerned about? What is this land really worth? And that's what you're concerned about when you're using that as collateral, is what am I going to be able to get for this? If I end up with this again, what's it worth? Well, we just created 10 comps right here. They're all very similar. This one sold for 120, this one sold for 125, this one sold for 115, 120, 125, and they all sold right there. So I know that if I have to take this land back, that at the minimum I'm going to get is going to be what that average is right there. And so that's a beautiful thing in this particular format. It doesn't work that way when you buy a single family home in the middle of a neighborhood. And I say that because prices fluctuate quite a bit in residential real estate. Land is a much more stable play. And when you create the comps and they're literally all right next door to each other, it's a pretty sure thing that you know what that value is going to be worth. So Yeah, to answer your question, the underwriting on the land side is a little easier because of that particular play.
And so when you're taking a look at what, large chunk of land to purchase and looking at how you're going to divvy it up and, kind of get some numbers in your head, okay, we can do this many plots for this price. I think we can get about this amount. When you're looking at comps for that initial piece of land that hasn't been subdivided, and are these plots of land, are they pretty close to other subdivisions or areas, or are you kind of going a little bit out of the way on these and doing something a little more, let's just go with the term rural?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the tough part. And that's kind of what I alluded to, that it's a little bit harder on our end because, yeah, usually we're buying 20, 30 minutes outside of town where you can still buy 100 acres.
And remind everybody where you're looking, what market?
So we're in the Texas area, and so we're working what we call the Texaplex or the Golden Triangle. If you look at the interstates connecting Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, Waco, once again down to San Antonio, and then over to Houston, and that makes a triangle right there. That's where 98% of the growth in Texas is happening right now, inside that. So we stay right there. We buy 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes outside of one of those major cities. And because that's where you can afford to buy 100 acres, and that's where people want to move. They want to move out because there is so much growth here. What is appealing to our market at our price point and for our buyer is 5 and 10 acres set out in the country a little bit, but close enough where you can still come to work every day, close enough where you can go to the grocery store, take your kids to school if you need be. But it gives them that opportunity. So that's kind of our niche window. But when we're running our comps, we're buying a hayfield. We're buying a piece of land that might have been part of somebody's ranch. There may not be many 5-acre comps, single family comps in that area. So it is dependent on, and when you are looking at them, they're 5 years old, they're 6 years old, they're not really relevant. But once again, once we get a couple sold, then it takes care of that.
Yeah, and you mentioned you were working with brokers to help
Absolutely.
get some comps on that and say, hey, what do you think about this? And they might pull, because I've done this in the past where we've looked at some land with clients and they said, hey, what is this worth? There's nothing really out here, and there's, I can tell them that there's nothing nearby because obviously you want something ideally within half a mile, maybe a mile or two if it's kind of out there. But once you start getting outside of that, the localness effect of real estate really starts to show its effect. And so I don't like to do that. So kind of the next best thing is to go to, what is your end product going to be? What is the most recent project that kind of looks like that? And hopefully it's recent enough to where it's been a year or two. Land, you can kind of get away with longer timelines just because of how lengthy these types of processes can be. And so, yeah, we had to look at stuff that was 5, 10. I think one time we were going on such a niche type of situation that we had to look like 15 miles away, but ended up being similar comps and things that we were going to end up doing. So that's kind of the approach there. When you
have to break those rules from what you're looking at normally in the city and your single family. You definitely do.
Now, we do buy in the city. We also do some entitlement and then sell to a residential developer as well. So when we're looking at land, those are two different businesses and two different types of due diligences. It's just like two different processes. But with the notes that we originate, we are putting fencing, culverts, roads. We're making sure that each tract has road frontage as well, has power, but the borrower is putting in their own well, their own septic, and then building their own home and turning that into their primary residence.
Gotcha. And as far as the permitting process and getting the land subdivided, can you kind of explain what that process looks like, and then any tips that you guys have discovered through your experience that can maybe speed the process along, use some insider lingo or something? Because I know that dealing with governmental agencies, you kind of have to learn to speak their language in order to get things done efficiently and collaborate with these bodies. But yeah, go ahead and just explain what the permitting process looks like for subdividing these and the subdivision process for y'all's business.
I forgot the word that I'm going to try to talk about. There it is. Okay, thank you. I always describe this. So you're asking us to peel back the curtains a little bit, which I certainly don't mind. There's a reason why we do this in Texas. We also, I don't know if we mentioned it, we do it a little up little bit up in Arkansas. I don't know what all states do this, but here's one of our quote secrets is when we do this, we will subdivide on a survey instead of having to go through pre-plat approval. Instead of doing a full entitlement, we're buying outside the jurisdiction. We are in the country. There are very little, if any, restrictions, and we're not on water. We're not on sewer or anything of that nature. And so a lot of that gets mitigated by just doing by buying in the country, and then you can subdivide on a survey. One thing that you might want to pay attention to is the size of the parcels of land. In some counties, you can get away with smaller ones, and some you have to do larger based on perk test, because all of these guys aren't going to be on sewer. They're going to have to do septic. And some counties have a size where they don't care if it perks or not. You have enough acreage where they're not concerned about it. And so we generally try to sell, if that's 5 acres, we'll sell at 5.1 acre plots, so that's kind of another one of our little secrets there, is making sure that septic's never going to be an issue for the guys you're selling to the end user. And it reduces our costs to separate on a survey as opposed to going through the whole pre-plat approval process.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great idea. And I never would have thought of that, but that is it is a nice little way to cut the corner on that and kind of to speed things along, because ultimately, do you usually end up getting another survey then when you go through that, or do you just stick with that original one if it?
We'll survey them out into individual lots is what I'm kind of saying. Yeah, so we'll hire a surveyor to do that for us. But the reason why I mentioned that, and I specifically said Texas and Arkansas, is not every state does that. We've looked into doing it in other states, and that was not, you had to go through pre-plat approval. You couldn't subdivide on a survey. So you have to make sure you can get away with that in your state. I say get away with it, that you're eligible for that in your state.
And we like Texas and Arkansas because they're both lender-friendly states as well.
Yeah,
So
and when you mean lender-friendly as opposed to other states, what are some of the roadblocks that you see as opposed to Arkansas and Texas where they are more lender-friendly?
Well, let's hit a couple of things that we do to stay above board no matter where we are. And that is, we purchase an RMLO, residential mortgage loan originator. I think it's registered mortgage loan originator. Anyways, and that's a third party that vets the borrower. They'll do usually a 50 to 100 page write up for us on their previous work history, pull their bank statements, how much they have in the bank, the previous borrowing history, of course, credit score, debt to income. And they'll give us this packet, and they ultimately say, this person has the ability to repay this loan. You're not taking advantage of them. You're not putting them in a tough spot where they can't make this payment. And so we utilize an RMLO. We go ahead and purchase the lender's title policy. We close at a title company. All of our documents are written up by the attorney. And we purchase that lender's title policy. That verifies that we have this in first lien position free and clear. And we utilize a third-party servicing company. So the borrower pays an additional $20 a month for our third-party servicer. That third-party servicer escrows for taxes and insurance on behalf of the borrower. And they're the middleman. They keep track of how much principal and how much interest came in, when the payment came in, if it was late, if it was early. They send out notices for us, and ultimately we're on the passive side. They send us the payment every single month when it comes in. They keep us updated on all of that. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say with Texas and Arkansas, and again, worst case scenario if something happened, when he's talking about the comps, having the comps, that's very important, because if we had to foreclose and take that property back, we have that available. And so the foreclosure process is very quick in Texas and in Arkansas. Now, our foreclosure rate is small. We've done hundreds of notes, land notes, and our default is under 5%, probably about 3 to 4%. Saying that,
who wants to foreclose anyways, right?
Right.
You're not trying to foreclose on somebody. You're not trying to take back something.
And the borrowers want, here's another thing about land that we love, is you've usually got, because it's a larger plot of land, you've got multiple generations. So they're going to do everything they can to make sure that they're going to pay on that note, because it's usually not going to affect one person. It's going to affect multiple families. on this 10-acre lot. So
What she's saying is we often have like 4 borrowers on a particular property. So it's not just a husband and wife.
might be multiple
It
generations.
could be a grandfather included. It could be somebody else. And so they're vested in that. And once again, they're not looking to foreclose, and we're not looking to foreclose. Like if we need to move a payment to the back, let's do that. If we need to work out something, let's do that. If you lost your job, let's talk about it a little bit. But we do foreclose, and that is a reality of the business that we're in. When we say lender friendly, specifically when we're doing the raw land, if they have yet to move onto the property, we can foreclose in as little as 60 days. There's a 60-day waiting period, so 2 months. If they have moved onto the property, then it goes to 120 days. I believe that's correct. Don't quote me on that 100%, but I believe that's what it is. So you have to wait a little bit longer. Saying that,
And the cost is very little too.
it's affordable. We have an attorney that does it for roughly $2,500. It takes about a month process from when we say go to get it all done. And we've walked that through with some people that we've sold the notes to. We've done it ourselves, but we've also, hey, if we sold a note to you and they're missing payments, like give us a call. We'll walk you through what you need to do, what the steps are to get that done, share the attorney with you and help you do that. And the beautiful thing is the same thing applies to the lender that owns that note. Well, they have the comps created for them as well. We can even give you the agent that sold the property initially. She probably has 15 people saved in her cell phone that wanted one of those pieces of land but couldn't pull the trigger 18 months ago or a year ago or whatever. So we've helped people reload that property as well. So I think when we say lender friendly, we're saying this is an expeditious process. We're not going to be drawn out. No one's going to, if a squatter comes in like this, these aren't issues down here in Texas. We can take care of it relatively quickly and ultimately help get it reloaded, i.e. sold again with another down payment come in with another term financing. And the beautiful thing is if you're a couple of years into it on the original note and you have to sell it again, well, you sell it again for another 15 years and you reset that amortization schedule and it's back to receiving pure interest again at the beginning. So it's kind of good.
Love it. And just a couple more quick questions about the business side of things, and then we'll move on. But when you guys are talking to investors, and even from the perspective of the operators, people who maybe are interested in doing this for themselves, what are some of the top questions that they should be asking? Let's just start with from your perspective as the operator and learning this business. What are a couple of the first things that you should be learning to get started?
I was going to say underwriting is super important. We've seen, I mean, just in owner finance alone, it can be the Wild West and not as heavily regulated as maybe other asset classes. And so when we do underwriting, we make sure that, because we can sell to a bank, an institution as well. So we encourage people to always make sure your underwriting is clean and enough to then sell or have it where a bank would want that as well. I would say that would be number one.
Yeah, you have to think about that. You have to think about your exit when you're originating the deal. You have to make sure you're underwriting. If you're planning on selling these notes, well, what's it take to make these notes look marketable? Well, you got to have that RMLO in place. You got to have that third-party servicer. Go ahead and buy the lender's title policy. Make sure it's not drawn up on a napkin. This is pretty basic stuff, but we hear all kinds of horror stories, and we have banks and we have people that are like, y'all's underwriting, look, y'all's paper is clean. It looks really good. You provided everything in a nice little packet. Make it appealing and marketable to somebody so that it's easy for somebody else to take a look at this and go, I like this or I don't. Instead of not having one piece of document connect to the next one and, you know, your deeds are all misplaced and you got to go look stuff up at the county. That's just a lot of trouble. So think about your exit on your purchase is what I would say. Make sure the due diligence is
definitely
good.
Exit. And then on the land side, when you're buying land, we've heard of a few people do this in certain areas that we just would never buy land and do it, where it's pretty desolate. We focus on areas that are going to be in growth and development and out or just slightly outside of the major growth and development areas. Because I mean, with that Texaplex and that Golden Triangle, it's just all coming together. I mean, and there's only so much space, and now it's starting to go out and out and out into more of those rural areas. I mean, Waco, for example, I grew up in that area. I never thought I would see Waco in the boom that it's had ever. And we've bought land out there. We've had great success in the Central Texas area. So again, it's just finding the right piece of property and then making sure that your underwriting is clean and having the team set in place. It's not just us. I mean, we've got a whole team that is doing a lot of hard stuff too. So I would say maybe those are the three things that I would encourage. You can't do it alone. I mean, you know this, like you go at it alone, like sure, you can have some success, but when you've got the right team set in place, I mean, it's a legacy building.
And on the flip side of the coin, you just spoke from the operator perspective and how to learn the business. But if I'm an investor and I want to get into note investing or land investing, what are some of the frequently asked questions that you guys receive from people who are purchasing the notes from you guys and doing business with you, or where you're raising capital from?
Some of it is the same, the underwriting. What can you show me? What can I learn? They want to know who's borrowing. How did we come up with the idea that they were a good borrower? They want to know all of that. A lot of them say, well, what's the value of the land? How do I know what the value of the land is? What the value of the collateral? And that's once again, to our advantage, we go, here's all the comps. Here's what they all sold for. So we try to do the best we can to mitigate those questions that they have, and in concerns, and address them head on. But a lot of them say, what if I do have to foreclose? I don't want to get into this foreclosure business. And so I think that for some people, that's it's a hard to go area. Once you start bringing attorneys in and having to file documents, things get a little scary for some investors. What else do investors ask about?
Well, I was just going to piggyback off of that. For us as a company, we walk through our investors. As a note investor, what we've seen, I mean, I would say well over 75% of our note investors that have bought a note, they come back in 6 months, within a year, and buy another note. And so they love the paths of cash flow. Once they see that it works and how easy it is, and they go, oh, I want more of this. So we walk and educate our investors. A lot of our investors right now are investors that have invested in other asset classes and never in a note. And we just encourage people, look, don't have your whole portfolio in notes, diversify. But if you don't have notes, it's a good place to diversify and have a base hit every time. It's not a home run. It's going to be a steady cash flow and base hit every time.
Yeah. I mean, just to speak to that, we do a fair amount of educating, not only going and speaking in front of others, but when we get on the phone with most people have never invested in a note. Everyone's had a rental. It seems like everyone's participated in a multifamily syndication or something. And everybody understands that. They're sticks and bricks. They can go touch it. It makes sense to them. They understand that asset. But when we say this is a pile of documents, it just doesn't compute. And so I would encourage anybody who is not invested in a note to go get a little bit of an education into notes. I think they're a great, I'm going to call it undervalued, undersought after, under pursued asset class that isn't that big. It hasn't gotten that big where I feel like multifamily is. Anyways, forget my opinions on other asset classes because clearly I'm biased. But I think people should get educated on. There's a reason why the banks, I come back to this. There's a reason why the banks do it. They don't involve themselves in the day-to-day of the real estate. They allow somebody else to take the excess risk. They just lend on it and hold that trump card. And there's a reason why we say notes aren't sexy. Notes are the goats. They're the greatest because that's how these banks were built. And obviously they're gargantuan sized companies from lending and then holding that first lien position. It's a very passive way to create legacy, to create impact and it is a beautiful thing when you have these payments coming in, you just buy another note with the cash flow off of a previous note that you bought. Now you're compounding your notes. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and just due diligence and underwriting, due diligence on who the originator is, and whether it's us or somebody else. You just want to make sure that there is due diligence and underwriting that's clean, all T's crossed, I's dotted, and that you're, very detailed in all of your underwriting, and you just got to get some education on that.
And where are some good sources from you guys? Offer a lot of education. If they wanted to connect with you, do you guys have ebooks or a platform out there that people can learn from you guys? And then on top of that, what are some other resources that people can look into to learn more about note investing? Because I know that this is an area of which that I am not wholly experienced in, but that's why I'm so excited to talk to you guys, and that's why we spent so much time on the businesses, because I'm curious. I know everybody listening is curious, but for you guys, where is y'all's educational platform, and where can others find more resources on this?
We don't write books and do courses, but coaching. But when an investor comes in, we walk them through for free. We don't charge, but we do have friends and people that we recommend, and great educational coaching and courses specifically on notes. And I could tell you, Dan Deppin's a great one. Kevin Shortle is another one. Tracy Z, her and her husband, Tracy and Fred. Those are kind of like the OGs of the note. Eddie Speed too. He's got a big note place as well, note school and course. But when you kind of glean a little bit from each person, everyone has their own thing that they like or don't like. Because when you get into notes, it's just, you've got performing, you've got non-performing, you got first and second liens, you've got a gamut. You could do a partial. And what we love about notes is that you don't have to buy a full note. And we sell partial notes as well. So it allows for the non-accredited or a non-note buyer that just wants to dip their toes in to try it out, and you still get institutional rates, double-digit returns on these notes. And so I would just encourage education outside of, not only with the person that you're dealing with, but also outside as well. And not a lot of people are educated in land. So that's kind of our niche in our space. So we really try to help people understand land. For whatever reason, people feel like land might be risky, or they're just unsure of buying land. But it's just been steady growing, and the value add every time a borrower puts a well on that property, every time a septic is done, every time they start building on that property, your value of land is going up and up. And just to say, even when we've had to foreclose on someone, well, that value of that land has gone up. And so now we made more money we don't want to foreclose on anyone, but we ended up making more money and reloading that note. So
they can't take a house that they built with them. They can't take a water well that they dug with them when they leave. So that's left on your property, your collateral that you have.
Absolutely. In terms of strengths and weaknesses that you guys have, both for yourselves, each other, and let's just start with strengths. And Crystal, what would you say is your greatest strength in your business and personally with how you guys operate everything?
I'd say my strength is I am definitely relational. I love relationships. If that was like a superpower, it would be mine. I love building relationships. And also I can be a big visionary when it comes to the nitty gritty and details and the money aspect of things. That's where this guy comes in. We stay in our own lanes. And so for me, I can go, but ultimately it's about relationships for me and where I thrive and where I grow.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
It's accurate. You're willing to own your awkwardness. She doesn't have to have all the answers. I have to have all the answers, especially if you want me to talk to somebody or, I want to know all the answers. Well, what if I tell them I don't know the answer? They're going to see right through me or whatever. She has no fear of that. And she'll just talk to anybody about anything. And then when they ask her something, I've never thought about that. It's hard for me to admit to that. So yeah, I'm more of the analytical side. She's more the relational. I'm more of the guy looking at comps, looking at numbers, going, okay, hold on, can we do this? Sometimes I'm the creative guy on what if we did this to the rate? And could we refinance that? And could we what if we just ask the guy to carry this a little bit longer? There's a couple of the creative side of real estate. Sometimes I'm able to come up with something that maybe somebody hadn't thought of before, or try something off of the wall so that we can get a deal done with somebody, right? But I think that's probably my strength.
Yeah.
And I thought about this too late. I should have had you guys do the matchmaker game and write what you think the other person's is down first, and then we can do it.
Well, I think we would have nailed it.
Yeah.
Or what is
Totally.
it? The newlywed game. That's what it is.
But that's the beautiful thing. I don't tell him what to do. He doesn't tell me what to do. Like, we stay in our lanes and we respect each other and just encourage and build each other. We foster each other's giftings. And I think that's where it just works. And we've been really blessed to have that from the very beginning. Again, like you said, it was not intentional. We just kind of like our backs were against the wall and we had to figure it out. And so it just worked. I remember even when we started from the very beginning, we just kind of figured out each other's strengths and weaknesses. And when we had the oil field housing facilities, we had salespeople that weren't doing their job. And he one day asked me, he's like, hey, you can build relationships. Can you go out and start sharing that we've got this man camp? We need people to come stay here. You know, it's a hotel out in the middle of nowhere. We needed clients.
She started taking pies into these oil companies and giving them pie, putting it in their break room, and people would listen to her. Even though it said no soliciting on the front door, she'd carry in pie. And who's going to reject somebody carrying a pie?
Bringing a fresh pie. Hey, then it just opened conversation, you know? And then when they started talking about negotiating and money and the price and this and that, I was like, hey, I'll get you to the guy that can handle all of those questions for you. And it just worked out. And so anyways, we laugh. It's like even when we were wholesaling, I'll just side note, I would be driving the car. This is way back in the day when you were like doing bandit signs.
Yeah, before you could virtually wholesale.
And I was driving the car and he was jumping out and putting bandit signs on the corners. Anyways, it's just funny. We've always had our space and our roles.
I love it. And I think that's probably the best advice and something that I've experienced in past for me is partnerships work the best when you all don't have the same strengths. You actually complement each other with your strengths and your weaknesses, and you fill the gaps in between those. Because if everybody is doing the same thing, then you've got kind of too many cooks in the kitchen. There's overlap. Everybody checks each other's work, and ultimately it can just get really convoluted. But when you trust each other to do your role and in your separate capacities, that's where you can really thrive as, you know, in your case as a couple and in business together, but other people more abstract for just basic partnership structures. You know, people want to get in, have a common vision and build off each other's strengths and weaknesses. For you guys and in your goals, how do you set your goals and what do those look like right now for you guys?
It's a good question. I'll be very transparent. We pray a lot. Like for us, we come together not just as business partners, but husband and wife, and we decide what's going to be best for our family. And right now, we're personally in a situation where we have an opportunity to scale and grow, but you know, that sounds great and all, but is that also going to compromise our family time as well? So I think for us, it's a big balance that we have to make sure. But when setting goals, I think we both have the goal of building and leaving legacy as well. So for us, the reason why we do what we do is I think I'd shared this with you. We had adopted our daughter, and then her and her mom, they were sex trafficked, and we got her the day she was rescued. And after that, we ended up building a place of refuge for women and children in Alaska. And that was our driving force. That's why we do what we do and why we still continue to drive that. And so I think building legacy and just it's more about than just business. It's growing something bigger than us.
And I love that. And I love the selflessness of it. And you should look into Paul Moore. He's another investor, I believe in Texas. Could be mistaken, but he has a similar benefit to where his business is that's the charity that he donates with his in tandem with his business is towards, human trafficking and those types of situations. So I love that you guys have put so much thought and effort into that space because it's very serious. But the things that you guys do and have been able to do so successfully is kind of ties back to your mindset, right? And your why. You mentioned it, and it's about building legacy and being able to get the best out of life and for your family and have that balance. For your mindset, how would you describe your mindset? Do you guys kind of have a shared hive mind on that, or is there different approaches to each week?
I think there's probably a different approach to each week, but we are not a high stress or high revving couple. We frequently, I don't know, we'll frequently not go to certain events just if it just fills our schedule, or if it's not revenue producing, or we're better taking things off of the calendar than adding more things to the calendar. I think we value the ability, because of the way we started, and because when she got pregnant and then our son was with us when we were working, we still had our backs against the wall several years later. Our kids have never known us to go to work every day. We've always worked from home. We've always been remote. I guess what I'm trying to say is we value being able to get up with our children and take them to school. We value the ability to have a coffee and just relax a little bit. But there is a time that, we do turn on work, but we get things done. But then we also try to tone it down right about the time the kids are coming home and they've got some sports events and stuff to go to. So it's a balance though, right? Because there are evening events that we need to go to. There are other engagements we need to do. But I guess you'll find that we're not hard chargers all the time. We are much more slow paced than we are fast paced, I would say.
Yeah, but it's a good, healthy balance. We really try to push when kids are gone, but when kids are here with us, we want to be available and make sure that we give them the attention that they need and deserve. And then also,
we're not always very good at it.
Our kids come with us a lot of times too, which is the beauty of what we do. They've learned. I mean, our son, he's learning a lot. He just turned 14. And so it's really cool that then we get to pour into our kids and they get to be part of it too. But I agree. It's just more of a balance. Like you said, a mindset. We know when to turn it on and we know when to turn it off too. And we know when to say no to things. And look, this in real estate, there's always the shiny objects all over. So, and we've been there, done that. And so we're really just trying to hone in and niche down and stay focused on that. And I think that helps us go, okay, this is where our focus is. If it's not that, then you know what? Our time needs to be spent with family and other things instead of chasing after that shiny object.
100%. And I love that approach to your business and your family and life. And I know that your kids are going to appreciate that. And you've already taken notice of the things that they're picking up from you guys. And that's going to be massively valuable to them later on in life. And I can see you guys as very good examples for your children and for other people. And that was one of the reasons I was so excited to have you guys on is to put that on full display. Because I think you guys are a wonderful example. And as we wrap up, and thank you guys for staying on. I know we're going over here a little bit. Just a couple quick questions to end it out, round it out. Not real estate related. Rick, what was your first job?
I can tell you a couple of my first ones was watering plants at a nursery and sweeping all day long. All we did is you sweep up all the dirt and water plants half the day.
How old were you?
I couldn't drive. My mom had to drop me off there.
How old were you?
14,
15. I don't know how old it was. It was a real job, like a real paycheck kind of job. I did work for my stepdad a little bit. He owned his own business and I'd go work for him. He was a locksmith and I would rekey locks for him. And so I did a lot of that. I used to work in a deli slicing meat and cheese when I was in high school and sliced my finger open. Had to go get stitches for that. Here, I'll stop boring you with all the little jobs I've had, but
No, that's hilarious. I love this question because because everybody, this is kind of where you are. I like to know, what were some of the foundational occupations that got
yeah.
everybody started. When you got that first paycheck, did you have one of those come to Jesus moments about how much you actually made?
No, I don't think I thought about that until in college. And that was when I had that rental property. I think I was telling you. I say I had a rental property. I bought a house to live in, but then I rented out the other rooms. And I rented out the other rooms and I lived in the master bedroom, but they paid the mortgage and all of the utilities. And I still made like $150 a month. Now my mortgage was only 400 something dollars back then. But I cash flowed in college. And I was like, I do nothing for this. I live there. I get to take advantage of it. I get to live in the master bedroom, but yet I'm staying here free and I'm still making money off of it. And I think if anything about the keys to real estate or when I made money and go, okay, I can see something in this was then when I was younger and could finally drive, it was probably just putting gas in the car and buying Slurpees at 7-Eleven. I don't think it
Yeah,
was monumental back then.
a little extra spending money. What was your first job?
Well, it was American Eagle, and I worked there for maybe like 6 months ish or so. No, not even 6 months. It was like for less than 6 months, like a summer and a few extra right before summer. But I tried to wait tables one time and I quit before I got fired because I just sat and talked to people and I wasn't turning over the tables fast enough and they would get mad at me. They're like, you need to turn over more tables, move faster. And I was like, but I'm having a great conversation with them. That didn't go well.
That's probably the one thing I never did. I never worked in a restaurant or anything. Actually, no, that is a lie. I worked at Texas Roadhouse for one day.
Wow.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
friend asked me to come in for an interview because they were getting like bonuses for any friends that just came in and interviewed. I kind of had some time to get a job, and I thought about it and said, "I'll give it a shot." And came in there. I didn't realize that it was for the bus boy. They just had said open position, and they just kind of talked to me, and so I was like, "Sure, I'll take it." Just came in there, and they just gave me a bucket and a big old tray and told me to go around there, and they didn't let me go inside and put all the dishes away until the glasses were pretty much hitting the ceiling. I was about half this size, and it wasn't wheeling around or nothing. So I was like, yeah, I got better stuff to do.
I was gonna say, growing up, my focus was sports, and my father wouldn't let me have a job. And I know that sounds weird. I played college ball as well, but our son, he grew up in a big part of his growing up was in Alaska. I mean, that was home base for us for such a long time. But he worked hard. We would do our own wood, haul water. I mean, manual labor type stuff. And our son thrives in responsibility like that. And he's 14. And where I didn't have that. And so I didn't have the appreciation of money and what it takes to make money as well when I was growing up until I got older. But our son, it's beautiful to see because he's a hard worker and he's very smart and he likes to either invest or save his money. He's just more a different mindset than what I had when I was younger, but it was all about, work, go to school, go to college, and do all of these things. And we laugh. I mean, we went to some big universities, but we don't use our degree. And not that that's wrong. It's just our son is on a totally different path. I had shared with you, he's already flying and getting his pilot's license and all of that. So what I see though is he worked hard when he was younger and even now as a 14-year-old, and he has that mindset very different than I think what you and I grew up with.
Yeah, and it just goes to show it's those things that he's picking up from you guys and getting that work ethic and everything. So as we wrap up here, the last pieces of advice that you guys would give to the listeners to send everybody off and go have a great day and hustle? What are some things that you guys would like to impart on the listeners?
Outsource what you don't like to do. We are not good at social media, and we're not overall good in technology for the most part. But recently, we've brought on some people to help in that area. And are we still on every platform and all this stuff? No, not at all. Nor are we trying to be. But taking that off of our plate and taking that stress off of our plate and just having somebody else do it is worth every single penny of it. Don't struggle through it. Even if you don't have the money, don't struggle through it because you don't have the money. Figure out a way to pay somebody else to do what they love so that you can focus on what you love. And then the money will take care of itself.
Yeah. And I would say also find your why as well. That's the most important for us, is why we get up every morning. I mean, it really is a joy and a blessing. Sure, there's hard days and hard times, and you're having to deal with, putting out fires. We had one right before this podcast we were dealing with, but it's good. There's joy in that because we know our why and what we're striving for. And building relationships is everything. I would say piggyback off of you and what you said, and then build relationships as well and find your why.
I couldn't agree more. Crystal, Rick, guys, thank you so much. I know we went long today, but honestly, I was just really enjoying my time with you guys and our conversation. Massively valuable to everybody listening. And I hope you guys took some notes on this, because this really was a masterclass and a 101 on note investing, land investing. And so there's a lot of great lessons here and personal lessons as well. So guys, thank you so much for being on today.
Appreciate it, Cory. Thank you so much.
This is fun.
No problem. Well, guys, this has been the latest episode of the Mastering Commercial Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Cory Mortensen. We had Rick and Crystal Rumer. Go check them out. Go support them. And we'll see you next time. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Mastering Commercial Real Estate podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and give it a like, leave a review, or share it with a friend. It really helps us grow and reach more people who want to master this space. If you have any feedback or ideas to improve the show, reach out, leave a comment. I'm always looking to make it better and tell us what you like or didn't like. And don't forget, if you're ready to start investing passively and want to learn more about upcoming commercial real estate deals, head over to ONE-9 Holdings. That's 19 Holdings, and join the investor list. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.